Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Praise Podcast. My name is Eric Lyday. Of course, I am joined by, you know it, go ahead, you can say it with me, the one, the only, the co-host above any other co-host, the Brooke Paninsky, and it is 2025.
Yeah, it's 2025, and that still makes me feel awkward.
It's
I don't ever know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, when you say that?
No, when you.
What did you do with your hands?
The co-host of all.
Oh,
thank you. But
I thought you were talking about the year 2025.
No. Anyways, sorry, but it's 2025.
It
Things
is.
are rocking and rolling.
It is.
It's crazy.
It is wild to think that. I saw a thing the other day that was like we're closer to 2050 than we are. It was like.
To 2000?
Well, no.
Because that's not really true.
No.
That math doesn't math.
It wasn't 2000.
Oh.
I don't know. It was something. It was just a number that was like, oh man, that's kind of
surreal.
Wild. Yeah, that's kind of. But anyways, so hopefully you're having a great and happy New Year, first podcast of the year, and it's like we're coming out of that. We're coming out of that like 2-week stretch where. I guess it's really more like a week, but kind of 2 weeks of that like limbo between Christmas and New Year's where nobody knows
what day it
is, what's going on. You don't know if like other people, like you speak to no one else. You don't know if other people are still alive, if they exist. It's just like this.
You hibernate for a minute.
Yeah, you're just in your house and.
It's so amazing.
Yeah, and so we're coming out of that phase of today was. Really kind of the first official day back to work, really, for a lot of us. And so, that's that. So we're hoping that you're probably back to work coming out of that phase of life as well and getting back into the regular things of life. Before we get started, let's just update everybody on all the things they need to know because somebody might have made the New Year's resolution to start watching or listening the Praise Podcast.
Wow.
I bet that was a lot of people's.
I bet that was no one, but for the one person it might be.
There
Go
might
ahead.
be, there might be one person out there who's like, tell me
my gosh.
how I can get more involved with the Praise Podcast family. So you can first and foremost follow us on Instagram. That's a great
Not
way.
very exciting, but
well, we haven't posted anything in weeks. Give us a break. We're coming out of.
That's so funny.
It's not like we haven't been doing anything. It's just we've had to put our focus all on mainly our
Christmas,
our full job, and everything there. So it's not because we are just super lazy. It's just because we've been a little tied up. But anyways, Instagram is a great place to stay up to date with everything happening. You'll start to see more come back there now that we're past Christmas, and we will have an Instagram life again. Now that we're past that, the website thepraisepodcast.com, which is full of all kinds of cool things, which Brooke has very carefully curated for all of you, and so check that out. Great resources, our song spotlight list, which we'll get to in a minute. Other podcasts we recommend that you listen to, books, the studies, the list goes on. Maybe you're now a real New Year's resolution for a lot of people has probably been
read
like
more books or study more,
read more books, get in their Bible more, do some studies.
That we can help with.
That is probably a realistic.
That is a goal of yours we could get behind, really.
Yeah. So if that is you, but you're like, I really wish I knew where to start, or I wish I had some things that would actually keep me interested, to actually keep me going on this, then I really would encourage you to go to thepraisepodcast.com, go to our, it's called favorites, right?
Yeah, and resources.
Yeah, favorites and resources. But on there is, again, there's books, there's Bible studies, podcasts, there's like physical Bibles. If maybe you're just literally in the market for a Bible, those are on there. Some of our favorites of those. I know Brooke's got like her Bible study keys on there of like markers, and there's like even down to that.
The bookmarks.
The bookmarks.
Like, you know how your like Bibles, some of them don't actually anymore, but they for sure used to. They would have like the ribbon as a like a marker or a bookmark, and you just have one. And when I got my Bible rebound, I asked for two of them because I use them a lot, especially if like I'm teaching something really fast or whatever. Like it's just a quick way I'm going right to where I'm going. But there's one where you can buy and it's got like 5 or 6 ribbons in one.
I honestly need to get that because I always need more than 2.
But I have Post-it notes in my Bible too, like with that kind of stuff. But anyways, study tools keeps you organized.
So all that is on there. So check that out at thepraisepodcast.com. And then you can also just find the podcast there, but then you can also join in the conversation. There's ways that you can email us. There's ways that you can leave messages right there on the website. And so we always appreciate you guys joining in the conversation and being part of what we're talking about. And so that is the best way to do all of that. I don't know anything else that I need to need to share about that. I think that's pretty well that.
So many people watch on our, I don't know if it's not through like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, they'll watch, will actually watch on our YouTube page. And so, of course, just plugging along there, commenting on there, liking, subscribing, getting the alerts, all the things. So if you've already said that, I don't know. I'm sorry.
I haven't.
That would be something that's a beneficial thing for you to do. So,
it would be. It would be. Brooke, just real quick, what was the best part of your 2 weeks of kind of whatever you want to call it? You were sick in there for a little bit, so I know that wasn't fun. But
I was. Yeah, it was good to kind of like have a change of pace, and when with my the season of life that I'm in, like you're just needed all the time, from like everyone, just no matter where you're at, like you're just needed. People need you for things or whatever. And so then like, I think to be in a spot where other than just like, if my kids need me, that like, I don't need to be somewhere, or I don't have a meeting, or I don't have to answer questions, or I don't have to, be in charge of anything. Like I could just be and enjoy just time to myself. And, which, I mean, it's part of leadership and I love that. And it's part of the job, which I also appreciate, but to have just like a break from, answering questions and making calls and doing the thing and whatever. It just was nice to relax.
I feel like you just say it, like you say a break from you. Like that was,
that was really good too. But but it was good. It was good. Just, we had a very slow Christmas, which, and everybody, like has a busy Christmas, especially if you're married with kids. And Hayden, his parents were divorced when he was really, really small. And so like we've got, even more Christmases on his side. And so, just that can be a lot, of a schedule. Like when you are finally done with Christmas at Central and then you're going to doing all your Christmas things and you're running around, it's just so exhausting. Even though we're so thankful to spend time with family, you are so excited just to be home. But like this Christmas, we didn't have that many places to go to, which was really nice because literally Christmas Day, other than an hour we spent with my grandma, we just stayed home. And the kids, we asked them, what was like on their Christmas bucket list, or like what did they want to do for Christmas Day, like all the things. And they just said, we want Christmas pajamas and we want to stay in our pajamas all day and just play and watch movies. And I was like, done and done. And so we went and bought Christmas jammies at Kohl's and they picked out whatever they wanted. And it was just nice to just chill and relax all day long. And we didn't have anywhere to be but an hour of the day. So it was a blessing just to get to kind of rest. It was a change of pace that we needed, and it was really good. Yeah. So
it's good.
I know not everybody can say that, but I'm very thankful that we could this year.
Yeah. Our Christmas was very low key as well.
The Lord just knew we needed a low key.
Yeah. We went to, we did woke up, did Christmas at our house with the kids and all that. And then we went to my parents and did that. And that was it. Christmas. Adrian's mom had to work that day. And so
her family came later, right?
Yeah. Her dad came over for just like an hour Christmas Day night just to hang out, see the kids, etc. But then, so we hosted her family the following weekend.
Yeah, which is just different when it's, you had a few days.
We had kind of a gap in there. And so that was great. It was nice to not, feel like, because typically it's like you do one in the morning and then you're running to the other at night. And then, it's just a lot. Especially, I mean, Adrian knows. And so, and the family is usually gracious about it, but Christmas Day, is when it all catches up and hits. Because Christmas Eve, you're still kind of running on adrenaline, and everything else. And so then it's like Christmas Day is always the day that like you kind of feel like you come down from all that, and it just like you crash. Yeah, you crash. And so I'm usually not a whole lot of good Christmas Day, and so it was nice to chill and do all that. So we've been home projecting a lot. And so that actually it's been good. It's been a lot, but it's been good because it needed to happen.
Feels productive too, and you guys enjoy that.
It does. So one day it'll be done.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Song Spotlight.
Okay, let's do it.
Do you want to go first?
It makes zero difference.
Why don't you?
Let's see.
So kick us off.
It took me forever this episode to figure out what song I was going to do. Usually I like come in kind of knowing or. It just doesn't. It's just a
I knew right away.
Decision. You did. And tonight.
Usually it's.
Or what is it today? Today I was like, what is?
Usually I'm the one sitting here scrolling.
I know, but I was like, I just don't know where I want to land. But this one is fun. It's a song, and I've said this before, but a song that at first, like, it was a quick like pass for me, or just like wasn't one that I was like drawn to, and I hate to ever say like I just don't like it. Like I feel kind of bad, but like it was okay, but like there was nothing about it that like kept me, and so I just kind of I don't know, I just wasn't a vibe, and I couldn't figure it out, and so anyways, but the longer, or I guess it's on a playlist of mine, so like it kept coming up, and so then finally I just like listened to it all the way through, and I was like, okay, when you listen to the words, of course we know Brooke's a lyric girl, but when you listen to the lyrics, I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then it would just get stuck in my head, like rhythmically. It was so strange, but then because it was so different, it was stuck in my head. But anyways, it's called "No One Like the Lord" by Bethel Music and Jen Johnson. And the chorus goes, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain and seated on the throne, and there's no one like the Lord. And the elders, creatures bow, giving praise to him and him alone, because there's no one like the Lord. Oh, and we cry, worthy is the Lamb who was slain and seated on the throne. There's no one like the Lord. And all the elders and creatures bow, giving praise to him and him alone, because there's no one like the Lord." I think the reason why I eventually came to enjoy the song was I think the reverence. When I like finally just absorbed it for what it was, there was like this element of reverence. And anytime you can take revelation or like the heavenly gander about it, or just this like, I don't know. And I know you say it a lot, and you really like songs that require us to join in. Like we can't fathom that. Like we can't fathom heaven. We have no idea what it's like other than what the Bible, kind of tells us. But then you're like, but I can't fathom that, because what is an angel with what I'm like, you know what I mean? Like you're like, I don't even understand that. But so, we can't fathom it, but then it's like there's something just wild about doing something here on earth that's happening simultaneously in heaven in a way we can't understand, but that we believe we will experience one day. And so it's just like there's just a depth there that finally just marked me, and then that song just became one that I grew to really enjoy and appreciate more than anything. I appreciate the lyrics of that song and the posture that it has. So anyways,
I've been in the same spot with that one, because like I've come back because because lyrically you read those, and I'm like, man, this is right up my alley.
But then you imagine playing it live, and you're like, I don't think I could do it.
I just don't think this would land. And because
it would take people time as well.
And that's I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just obviously with the nature of what we do. Like you listen to a song, I think typically then after we think about the song, we think about, okay, how would that translate for our people live? What would that be like? And every time like I'll see the Instagram reels of like a clip of them doing that song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's massive, like that's cute, like golly, but then I think like, I don't know, like I just don't know how it would, because it is kind of weird.
It's just it's
not like weird in a bad way.
Jen. That's not what
weird
we mean.
In a bad way.
It's when you Christian songs, especially contemporary Christian songs, they are repetitive and they're easy to learn. And it's easy to rhythmically, what's coming. You just feel it, you learn it. It's quick to absorb, and it's predictable. And that's what makes it stick, because you can learn these words with a rhythm that feels familiar or easy to, kind of jump on board with. But then when you have, and we're seeing it a lot in music right now, of just people wanting to try something different. And there's several songs that I'll be like, it sounds like 2 or 3 separate songs and one song. And that's confusing for me, because people who listen know, like, I'm not a musical person, and why I have the job that I do, I have no idea. But like rhythmically, when I had to lead at the altar, I was like, I literally can't do this. And there was another song a long time ago that I felt the same way. I could not figure it out, because it's just not a natural thing for me. So like a song like that.
What was that? Goodbye Yesterday, when we were doing that for that camp. That song sent us.
It was such a. It's a good song. It's fine,
song.
But like, it's just
that's one that was literally
it's unpredictable.
It's 3 different songs.
It's 3 different songs in one.
Song.
It's just chaos.
The melody and
until you know what's happening.
Change constantly.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this song reminded me of the same way I felt about that Elevation song, Wind Meets Fire.
Yes.
It took me a long, like, I like both the songs. I think they're both great songs, but like, to do them, I just don't know. I just don't know that it would work, because it is like, especially.
And that is not an offense to our band.
No.
That's not what I mean.
No, it's a.
That's not it. We have the best team in the world.
Yeah, it's a, like, because, a lot of people don't listen to.
Yeah.
Like, if it's not radio Christian music, there's not a lot of people, at least in our congregation, like, there's not a lot of people that actually listen to what we would consider to be like worship music.
Right. Well, when we would start, we were, I don't know, almost 4 years ago, it'll be 4 years ago very quickly, where I was introduced to Belonging Co. for the first time, and that quickly became a ministry and pastors and a worship team, a ministry that, like, we not only just respected, but like needed. Like, we needed someone who was doing something that we felt called to do, like almost as like they were modeling it, like they were, and affirming the vision we already had. We saw another church that we were like, wow, like they understand that call, like like that's what we have vision for, and this is the vibe, and this is the whatever, and da 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 da. And fun fact, I remember the night that we came up with our praise thing, and I would have had, and at that time was not, I didn't know anything about Belonging Company, and we had one of the same like acronyms as they did. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And then like later on, I just thought, oh my gosh, like to me, I was like, that was crazy, affirming that like our thoughts were the same and we had no idea. But then later on, I'm like, as much as we talk about them, they'd be like, these people came and took some of our acronyms. Like, that's not true. Yeah. But anyways, all I have to say that quickly their worship and songs became like just a staple. I mean, we just loved them, and like lyrically, like sound wise, it was great. It was easy to learn, easy to like, I don't know, to do, but also like you're so huge in like the people in this congregation are going to be singing these words, and that's going to have to mean something. And so, and lyrically, and the posture of so much of what they were writing and putting out at the time was like what we wanted our people's hearts to be. And so we just began to do all sorts of Belonging Co. things, and our people had no idea who Belonging Co. was either. Right. Like, and they probably still don't. Yeah. But like, but to us, then it quickly became and people we work with, and just whatever, like. You just, in Instagram, all the things, you learn about the church and you catch on to their music and whatever. But like so many people, who attend here were like, what is this song? Because they're not going to know it from literally anywhere. Right. The first time they heard it was like, oh, Central does this song, whatever. So anyways, I find that kind of interesting as well. But.
So that's, and just with that in mind, you just know, because like, you're like, when you listen to a song and it makes you feel, you're like, I like this. But this is odd, like this is just a different, like it's, and then you're like, well, knowing it's going to be the first time those people hear it, and then it's just one of those things. You're like, you want your congregation to be able to catch on to what they're singing fairly quick, so that they can participate. So, yeah, it's a thing. But anyways, all that to say, it is a good song. It's just one of those. It is just one of those songs. My song is called "Holy Spirit Come." by Damascus Worship, and sang by a guy named Seth Schluter.
Wow.
Yeah, what a name, right?
Schluter.
I think
is
that's
that
how
a CH?
It's a C. It's a SCHLUETER. Yeah. But had a friend send me this song. Shout out Josh, and he sent me this, and really, really like it. I was not aware or did not know Damascus Worship, but it kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of listening to some of their stuff. But this verse is what hooked me. So the verse was, "We value your presence more than your power. We're here for the fullness, not just a taste. We want a friendship, not just a feeling, because fire without faith just fades away." And I really like that line. Fire without faith just fades away.
Yeah, that's good.
And so anyways, it's a good song. Holy Spirit Come, Damascus Worship. So check that out. You can check out the literal hundreds of other songs that are on our Song Spotlight playlist, which, as we mentioned, you can find. It's on Spotify, or you can find it at thepraisepodcast.com. But you can check out those songs. If you are, maybe your New Year's resolution was to start listening to more worship music, and if that was it, then boy, do we have the place for you to start. We've created the whole library for you. You just have to hit play. So hours.
Yeah, that's good.
Good stuff. All right, so today we're going to talk about culture today. Not like pop culture or like the world culture, but like workplace culture. And it's going to be a conversation spurred on by this was like a reel you saw.
I don't remember.
It was probably sometime. It was a reel. It for sure was a reel.
Yeah, it was either a post and I read it, or it was a reel and I heard it. Yeah. But either way, I was on Instagram.
Either way, it was, yeah.
Yeah. But I love that. Like something will come up, and if it makes me think about it, then I'm like, oh, like there must be something there. And yeah, I don't even remember word for word what it said, and I hate that I didn't like save it or whatever. But and the funny thing is, I literally thought, oh, like we could podcast about this topic, but because whether you're on church staff somewhere, or or just like you have a secular job, whatever, even how you like even if you're like a stay-at-home mom, or just in means of your family, like your family culture, like with the culture within your home. Like culture is something that everybody in almost any scenario can experience culture. And so anyways, basically on this thing that I either saw, heard, read, I don't know, it was basically saying how are you contributing to the culture? And in a sense of okay, I'll speak upon being church staff, because that's what this was talking about. And then it's very relatable for us in this conversation. But I think church culture is huge, not only just for your church, if you attend church, but when you're on staff at a church and, it's your 24/7 ministry job, culture's huge, because you have a bunch of people being people, but doing ministry together. And it can be hard sometimes, right? Just like any other job that you have. There's a greater level of accountability because you work at the church, and so you're if you work at the church, got to be the church. And there's just this extra pressure is not the right word, but it really is accountability, to be appropriate, handle things the way God would handle them, or say, do things as the Bible says to do. And I feel like it's one thing to be a Christian and then you work at a school, or you work at a factory, or you work at, wherever. And you don't always have the same accountability because it's a secular thing. So the secular, clause would be just, I guess there would be some similar moral compass there. But, there's just another layer when you're a believer, and you not only just have, culture standards written on paper because of people, but you've got the Bible and Jesus tells us how to live. And so anyways, I think culture is a huge thing if you anywhere, but it's a huge thing when you work on staff at a church. And so I think so much of the fruit that can come from the ministry you're a part of, culture has everything to do with the kind of fruit that you're going to see be produced, what you're really sowing, and the legitimacy of the posture and the condition of people's hearts, who are in, leadership positions. And so I always say fruit doesn't lie. I love that because fruit doesn't lie. And anyways, I can go on a tangent and talk about it forever, because when it's your day in, day out and how you feel in a workplace, and that workplace being church, culture is so important to take care of. And one thought that I had with that is just the idea that it can be very easy when you're not a pastor or you're not someone on like a higher level of leadership on a church staff, and you're identifying, these culture issues, or you're experiencing culture issues that you would be like, point the finger to leadership, being like, well, the culture's like this because leadership hasn't done anything about it, or the culture's like this because the leaders are this way, and and it's so easy, I think, to be in a position where you don't have a lot of power to point the finger and blame those above you as to why culture is the way culture is of your workplace. And the quote, or whatever I saw or read or whatever on Instagram.
The mystery.
I just have to find that. But it just was so cool. And why I thought about it was because it was like, no, like that's not true. Like every single person on a church staff is the reason why the culture of that building is the way that it is. And as quickly as someone would want to blame it on leadership, I just don't believe that that's true. And maybe people think differently, for sure. But I think that everybody on staff is the reason why the culture of the workplace is the way the culture is of the workplace. Now, I know that for many, scenarios or whatever, maybe there's like, one or two particular people, or like maybe they're da-da-da-da-da. But for majority, like what are you doing? Like how are you impacting the culture of your workplace? Because if you are, I don't know, I think there's a lot of wisdom in truly believing that the way that you speak and act and work and think and the posture you have when you show up, I think that makes a huge difference, whether you're a part-time employee or whether you're, the lead pastor. And anywhere in between of someone on staff at a church. But I don't know, it's something worth talking about. It's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I honestly appreciate the accountability that brings to be like, okay, I think we're very, very blessed where we work, and the dynamics of how many people are on staff, and the multi-site, and the dynamic of our culture overall being like very positive. But again, people are people, and ministry is ministry, and it's hard sometimes, for sure. But it's like there's such an accountability that I think churches miss, not accepting the fact that everybody plays a part in why their culture is the way their culture is.
No, I think that's it's a really good quote.
Yeah. Well, is it even a quote? Did I even say anything?
Real, whatever.
You get the idea.
Yeah, whatever it was. I think the concept of it is, because I just like you said, like we're all guilty of that. Of, it's very easy to sit back and identify issues or problems, and to say, well, if whoever's in charge of that would just do X, Y, and Z, then that wouldn't be, the situation. And as we know, because we've lived it out too, of like, nobody really understands the seat that person's in until you're in that seat.
Yeah.
And like you think it's easy to think you have a lot of perspective on different things,
and you just don't.
You may have a pretty wide,
but, not full
but you don't have you don't ever have the full perspective of that person's thought process, the responsibility, the weight, the seat that they're sitting in. You know, you just don't see it unless you're in it, and so I think that is a good reminder for us all, whether it's your boss at church or whether it's your boss at work. Like, you know, it's never probably as simple as what you think it could be or should be.
Well, and to say, like, I genuinely understand that there are a handful of situations where, like, the poor leadership is the reason why there's poor culture.
Right.
I get that 110%.
Yes,
and I do. I agree with you. That is a real thing.
Yes.
And like, so let me, like, clarify that. Like, poor leadership sometimes can equate to poor culture, and overall it might feel like you have no way to fix it or be the majority there or whatever, but you do still have the choice to at least be and behave and act and speak in a way towards the culture you want to see, you know, happen or change or what you want the culture to be like. And instead of just blaming the culture on leaders or on whatever, because that's a real thing. And so many people have experienced that, in which I am sorry. And there is an invitation to, as for your responsibility in that, and how you show up to that conversation or to your workplace or whatever, like what you bring to the table, how is that going to shift the culture? Because either way, like, just, you know, the odds are, like, you're not on the same, well, I say that. What do I know? Everybody's different. You know, in our situation, like, we're not on the same floor as our executive pastor and our lead pastor. And like, so we only see them, you know, when we need to, or we've got things or whatever. But the majority of the time, like, we're just with creative arts, you know what I'm saying? And so many churches are like that. You're not with the leaders, you're with your team. And so it's like, what's your team culture like? So if there's an issue with your team culture, don't blame your leaders above you. And I'm saying, what can you do to, you know, like, I don't know, what are you doing or not doing that could be impacting the culture of even just your, like, department team. And so I guess that's also the challenging, I don't know, the challenge that I'm bringing to the table of like, I'm not saying that poor leadership doesn't equate to poor culture, but I am saying that we all have a responsibility to somehow, in some layer or wave of it, impact the culture of our spaces.
Well, I think part of that too is, like, even if you feel like you're at the bottom of the totem pole, like, the reality is there's somebody underneath you, you know, like, even if you feel like, you know, like, just in our context, for example, like, you know, there are people that are, you know, as far as the organizational chart, would not be considered in a, you know, high level leadership position, but yet are managing volunteers every weekend. And so it's, you know, I think it's also, we can get in that mindset of it's the leader's fault, but then we forget that if we don't do what you're saying, of make the choice to still carry out, you know, whether you want to say fight for the culture or be an example of the culture that you want to see, want to create, like, you still have you still are responsible for contributing to that culture, because there are people underneath you. Even if you maybe aren't contributing to the culture of the entire organization, there are still people looking to you to set a culture. And so I think that's, you know, there's always somebody watching you.
And fruit just doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you have, you know, like Eric's saying, we've got like 100 volunteers underneath us. And so say, like, there was a culture problem or like whatever, which, praise God, we're blessed to not have to be dealing with that. But, you know, we would have to show up in our department with our individualized team. What would the fruit of our leadership be for the people that we lead on our team? And then even more so for our volunteers. We've got 100 of them. So it's like, what would, you know, what culture are we trying to, you know, create, you know, just with the people that we see on the weekends. And so what does that look like? And so if we're really serious about the tone and tempo and the nature of the culture that we believe to be prosperous and healthy and joyful and fruitful and all of the things, it's like, well, what can we do just with what we've been given to steward to create a positive and godly culture? And again, you're going to have people on maybe at the outside who are not in the ins and outs of creative arts or worship or whatever, who will see the godly fruit, from that. And like, it doesn't lie. And so, I think there's a lot to be said about that.
I was trying to remember the book. I can't remember the book I was reading this in. And yes,
seems to be a common theme.
Shocker. I was reading a book. Yes. Surprise. But they talked about this, it was this major manufacturing company in China did basically a workplace study on culture. And basically they were trying to figure out what is the amount of people that it takes to either positively or negatively impact the culture of the workplace. And they found that it only took 2% of people at this plant to either positively or negatively change the culture.
Wow.
And so, I mean, if you're talking about you're in an organization of 10, 20, 40 people, 2% is one person. I mean, you're not talking that many people. And so one person has that power, and so you could be that one person. To either A, negatively affect it, but also B, positively affect the culture of what you're in. I just found that really interesting because I think we think of like, oh, it's got to be these big things, but really, I mean, it could be as small as, one person making the decision of like, this is what I think needs to happen, or, what things need to look like, and maybe other people don't see it right now, but I'm going to make the choice that this is how I'm going to carry myself and let that just kind of spread to other people. And I mean, that's all it takes. And if you're the leader of that organization, then, good news, you have the power. Good news, you have the power to do that. The scary thing is it doesn't mean it takes very much to negatively do the same thing. But I think that's and that's something I have to be I have to be very careful with, and I fail at it all the time. And I try. I am doing better with this, but watching how I react to things, watching my attitude, watching how I carry myself in certain situations or whatever, because I know that how there's people are watching and they want to know what I'm going to say. They want to know what I'm going to do. They want to know how I'm going to handle it. And, a lot of times internally, how I want to handle something is very rarely how I externally,
which, praise God,
can
because self-control is a fruit of the Spirit.
Yes. And so sometimes that also means that I need to take a minute and not immediately, because a lot of times my immediate reaction is maybe not the fruitful reaction. And so sometimes I need to compose myself there. But I have to be careful with, if something, because I have seen in the past where if a call comes down from above, that I don't necessarily agree with, or I don't like, or I think is maybe unfair to our people, or whatever it may be, I have lived out and seen how I carry myself through that, how I react to it, how I respond to it, have an impact on the people that are looking at me to know how they should.
Yeah, and the reality is, as leaders, whether you consider yourself a leader or not, but you either create it or you allow it. And I remember Hayden's mom talking about that when I was in the world of education for so long. And, that is an atmosphere as a teacher that, can be very catty, very gossipy. Again, very much like you have your super and your principal, but then you have all these departments and you da-da-da-da-da. Like, it can be a whole thing. And I'm thankful that, my jobs have been awesome as an educator and hardly had any of that. But there was a particular time I was really young and I did AmeriCorps. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I worked for Hayden's mom when I was in college, and she was the superintendent at the time, and there was some drama going on, whatever. And, and she kind of looked at me as like the guest, because here's this 19-year-old girl who's kind of thinking about maybe going into education, and she's getting a real life, taste of what it's like behind the scenes. And I worked in the office in and out. And so like I would hear the conversations with the superintendent, AKA her, or like I'd be in the classrooms and then I might have heard the teachers say whatever about whatever. And so like I did have a unique like fly on the wall perspective with just different scenarios. And again, the perspective or lack thereof, from different positions. But she would always say, like, you either create it or you allow it. And she said, like, if I want the culture of my workplace to be one of respect and of, joy and of, listening and whatever, like, she's just like, I'm in charge of creating that. And she's like, but if I have a culture in my workplace of gossip and slander and pettiness and this, that, and the other, like I'm not addressing it, then I'm allowing it to happen. And so there is this like, contending for godly culture that I think we need to take seriously on every level, in 2025, whether it be, your staff on a church or you are an attendee at a church or you, again, are in a secular workspace, or again, we're talking about your family culture. Like you are either you are responsible for creating that culture, or if there's a culture happening that is not pleasure, I don't know, like pleasing to you or godly or whatever, like you're allowing it to happen. And so when you don't contend for godly culture. And so I think about, if you attend a church somewhere and maybe your church doesn't really prioritize tithing. Maybe your church doesn't really prioritize serving. Maybe your church isn't a church that seems to be flexible, or you have a lot of naysayers or a lot of complainers, or, when church ends and you eat lunch, you're not talking about what you heard God say or what you prayed about or something the pastor shared that really encouraged you. Instead, you're talking about what music you didn't like and Sally Sue was wearing, whatever, or did you see that guy in the back, or I can't believe the sermon, or, the pastor did a sermon on that same topic again. We've heard it all before. Or like, like when you come in critiquing and it's just like, you can either sit at that table and contribute it in a way that's godly, or you can sit at that table and allow, people to be ungodly and say these things that create an unhealthy culture for your church. And so it's like, and again, what's really powerful is when you begin to do this, you make yourself known as which culture you are for. And when you make it known that you are for a godly, fruitful culture, then what you participate in and don't participate in, people will recognize. They'll come to you and they'll be like, oh, can you believe that so-and-so and whatever, and that pastor and the worship team and oh, da-da-da-da. And when you allow people to talk like that in front of you and you receive it, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's crazy, and like, yeah, it could have been better, like you just kind of brush it aside or beat around the bush, like that's ungodly, and that is allowing that culture to continue. So then that person knows that you're a safe spot to come to when they have a ungodly complaint, and so then it's like, but when you're someone who would then address that and be like, hey, like I get that, you might disagree with some things, but I really think our posture in this should be, X, Y, and Z. Or I really think if you have, if you feel hurt by that, or if the root of that is whatever, like, why don't you just talk to them about it instead of being someone who just allows them to act in a way that does not produce good fruit or a positive godly culture. And instead you kind of contend for a godly culture with your own words. Like you don't allow the nonsense. Like that just changes everything. And I've seen the fruit of that. I really have. Like even in conversations with like, even kindly addressing something that you're like, hey, like, let's do this differently, or like, whatever it is, like that person or whatever, like all of a sudden, like they're not coming to you about whatever, or because they know you're just not going to partake in that. And that's a good thing. And so it's like, I almost want to challenge you. Like if you're someone that people find a safe place to land, to complain and to vent in an ungodly way, or that you're just kind of a hand holder or a back patter of someone who is, really wrestling with like ungodly fruit, like I would challenge you to get with the Lord about that and just and ask him how you should handle those situations, if you're not handling in the way that pleases him, or that keeps these people accountable, or that in love just kind of puts them in a different direction, or can better counsel them through that. And I think there's like doing little productive things like that is what truly begins to shape the culture of whatever space you're in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's huge. And I also, this is a side note, and I know I'm talking a lot about it, but back to kind of like the staff perspective, and I'm going to brag about Randy Davis, but when we were in a position, of hiring somebody else in outreach, and word got out that Randy Davis was going to take the full-time spot. The excitement that the staff people, even who weren't on outreach team, like it was our staff as a whole, the excitement that we felt knowing that Randy Davis was going to be a part of our team was so encouraging, because we knew Randy Davis. We knew her work ethic, her heart, the wisdom she carries, the motherliness of her, like people trust her, and we knew what she would do to the culture and that it would be positive. Just one person, like back to what you're saying, coming on staff and knowing she is who she is and that she's going to bring what she brings, and it is fruitful and it is encouraging and it is incredible and it was needed. And it's like, I mean, just the what it did to our spirits, mm-hmm. of just like, okay, like what a great addition, was huge. And so it's like, what would people say, if you got brought on their team? How would people say that you would be contributing to the culture of their environment by bringing you on board, by who you are, what you stand for, how you act, how you love God, how you love people, how hard you work, how dedicated you are, like how kind you are, how this, how that, whatever, like, because whether you believe it or not, or want to believe it or not, like every single person impacts the culture of wherever they are. And so the accountability becomes not what the leaders allow or don't allow, or what they're doing or not doing. Yeah. It becomes the finger pointing at you. What are you doing to contribute to the culture that you want to have in the space that you're in?
Yeah, that's all really good points.
Yeah,
really
I've been thinking a lot about it,
Well, and I think, too, there's something like you were saying because I think there's definitely the self-reflection of, am I a person that people come to basically complain?
Yeah.
Because that probably tells you what you're feeding into, mm-hmm. as well. And I think, as kind of coming from the different perspective of this conversation, like on my part, somebody who is overseeing, staff and volunteers, for me, I have to be very, and kind of like I was talking about, I have to be very careful about, because I'm human, and there are times when I just need to process through as well,
yeah.
Or I need to work through things. And so, if you are sitting in that spot where you're like, it's not that I want to complain, or it's not that I'm even trying to be negative, I just need to process, or I need to talk through, or get a different perspective,
yeah.
Maybe somebody who, and so all that being said, it's important to know, and to have people that that, like, okay, this is that spot, like, mm-hmm. that's Brooke gets a lot of that from me, because I know that this is a spot that I can go, that she has the perspective and viewpoint of what I'm dealing, what I'm trying to figure out and manage, but then also brings a perspective of, of staff, of people that are not in every conversation that I'm in, or doesn't necessarily see everything the same way. But I know that at the end of the day, she understands my heart and understands what I'm trying to work through. And so, that is a spot I can do that and then come out, and she understands that I'm not just sitting in there trying to gossip or complain or whatever, but it's hey, I want to figure this out, or I need a plan, and I need to know how, because clearly this is an issue, or this is a problem that needs addressed. Right. So what is the best way to figure this out? What is the best way to address this?
Yeah, but see, you coming in and saying, like, here's the situation, here's how I feel, but here's what I know, trying to find a place to land, and you're trying to find a place to land that's, like, again, godly and the most appropriate and the best that you can do or whatever. And that's different than if you were someone coming into my office being like, can you believe they did this? And like, this idea is so much better. Yep. And like, you have nothing but like bitterness, and there's no end goal other than you want to vent to feel better and someone to agree with you that, you were right and they were wrong and whatever. And so it's like the end goal of those conversations is what makes a huge difference of like, are you someone coming in to gossip, or are you someone coming in here to, talk about a problem that's a real issue and to find the best solution that you can. And so, whether you're someone who, and that's another point. So not only are you someone that people can land, for whatever, but like Eric also knows he's going to come in my office, share all these things, whatever. And I'm not always going to agree with him, because that's a real thing. Yeah. But also like he knows that end goal in mind is solution, and like, despite what I feel, here's what we know, like my flesh versus my spirit, like, and we can navigate all of that. And because that's healthy and that's the way it should go. Like, we're a team, that's what you do. But like, you're not sitting in one spot sulking, just like trying to be, the ones who are right, or like, and it's never a posture of like, well, I'm unwilling to change. Like, they just whatever, Like, it's so different. So it's like, and he knows that like the feedback I'm going to give him, like, is not going to just like to make him feel better. It's going to be like, okay, at the end of the day, like, I hear you, I see you, but like, whether it hurts your feelings or not, like, this is the direction that I think you should go. And again, still winds up in my office. So it's like, you can be somebody who's a sound-minded counsel, who provides different perspective, who listens when people are upset or frustrated or confused or hurt or whatever. And you're not just partnering with things that are ungodly about the situation, but you're someone who's like, I will affirm, you, and that your feelings are real, and this is hard. I see that. And like, solution. Yeah. And for your health, let's talk about forgiveness, or like whatever. And so, I think that's the important part of, again, that ties into culture, because when situations come, no matter where you work or whatever you're doing, that get hard, or that, are challenging or upsetting or whatever, like, how you solve them, how you approach finding a solution in situations, or how you approach even behaving or handling yourself in those situations, like, that again contributes greatly to culture. Yeah. It does.
Yeah. And saying all that too is just like, I know that, and not saying anything against any of other of my team, but like, I just know that there are certain conversations that like, it would not be beneficial. It would not be beneficial to them specifically for me to go in and lay all this on them, not because they couldn't necessarily give thoughts or opinions, but I know that if I throw all this out there, it's going to affect the way they view somebody or somebody else. And so I think that's where you just have to know who can handle this conversation, or who can I throw this on and it's not going to affect how they view something or see something, or, and it's just the nature of it. Like, especially like our team specifically, we spend a ton of time together. We're very close. We call ourselves see a family because that's how we view each other, you know, like, and sometimes that means we fight like that. Sometimes that means that but we also
have hard seasons.
Yeah. I mean, like that happens. But it also means that, we are all very protective and very loyal to each other. And when we feel like, you know, I know a lot of my team, if they feel like I'm under attack or if I'm being, you know, like, they will rally to defend that. Not just because it's me, but just because they feel like, you know, and while I greatly appreciate that, I have to be careful to not wield that like a weapon, you know, of like, you know, it's not like the attack dog of like, yeah, they made me mad, go sick them, you know, or whatever. And so like you just have to be very aware of all those things because that can all be a part of it. So maybe we can leave them with this or like leave them working towards. So let's say maybe you feel like you are somebody that is sitting in a spot where you're like, yes, I'm looking at the culture of my workplace, maybe my church, I'm looking at my family, whatever it is. I'm looking at the culture and I don't necessarily love what I see, or like I know that I need to be a person that says I'm going to be the one and start doing. What is like a productive first step in your mind that we should take?
Yeah. Repent. I mean, that's the number one thing you can do, because this isn't about you and the people you work with, or you and your family. Like, this is like about you and God. And so the first thing you need to do is repent, because we've all contributed to the bad side, you know, of the cultures we experience. And we have all failed tremendously to be fruitful and godly and, you know, handle situations the best way in, you know, our spirit self than our flesh. And so the first thing that's practical and will free you to begin making some changes is just to repent and to be like, God, I'm sorry that this has not been a priority. I'm sorry that I've not handled it well. I'm sorry that I just, you know, accepted that this was the way that it was and I am the way that I am and that, you know, whatever. Like, I'm sorry that I didn't recognize this problem beforehand. You know, will you forgive me? And will you help me see things how you see them? Will you help me desire to contend for godly culture? Will you give me strategies and wisdom in situations to have it on the forefront of my brain and the forefront of my tongue to participate in conversations, whether I'm speaking or just listening, you know, in a way that is going to contend for godly culture? And, you know, how can I look like you in the best way? And it has to start with a supernatural overflow and from him, because we cannot have a godly culture without God. And so if we are ungodly, we're going to have an ungodly culture. You know, that's math we can do. And it's like, if you have, again, the intentionality of like, God, I need your help in this, he's going to help you in that. And then because you've invited him into that space, he's going to show up. And in spaces that God is in, it's godly. And so I think there's a lot of practicality in just repenting and then asking for wisdom and being so intentional about conversations that you partake in and conversations you initiate, even just with your actions, not even your words, how you show up, how you work, what you do, what the, you know, over the top things like, you know, that, again, in strategy, the Lord will give you that you can initiate. You know, get creative, start something new. If there's, you know, a bad aura or like vibe about something, you know, that you guys, you know, do or don't do, whatever. And you're like, no, we need to change that. So then be the one who changes it, you know, and then you're the one speaking life and you're the one speaking joy and you're the one who made the edits to, you know, something to become more positive than it was before. And, you know, like just take, again, strategy from God, like he will give you the creativity to do little things like that. And when you ask him. So I would say that's like the initial, you know, those are like that's the first spot to kind of land in. And, you know, also just like want to randomly say too, like, even if you're somebody who like we alluded to earlier, like you're not direct leadership over a group of people or whatever. You are still leading people. There are still people that are looking at the way you live your life and looking at the way that you respond to situations. And because then there are people looking at you, you are a leader and an example. And so, and that will overflow and impact people no matter what your position is. And if you are a leader and, you know, if you feel like, oh, I've never really thought about this before, or I've never asked the team below me what they think about the culture, or I've never, you know, I'm not disengaged, but like when you're just not fully in the same area as other people, like you don't have the perspective. So if you're a leader, humble yourself and ask the people that you're in charge of, like, hey, like, what is your perspective about the culture of our workplace? Is there anything that like you need from me? Like, and if they come to you and, you know, if they say something, you know, just, you know, listen, hear them out, whatever, and be humble enough to be like, okay, God, what if that is true? Like, show me, you know, if there's anything in these conversations that I'm having that have some fruit to it, you know, it's some substance there that I need to take in and do something about or do something with. And I think there's such a then quick return for the people, like the sheep that you lead, when you come being like, hey, what do you think? Or like, hey, like, I'm sorry if I've ever, whatever. And then how quickly then your sheep are like, oh, like, okay. And they're willing to hear you out, and they're willing to, you know, even say sorry themselves about, you know, division that they've even caused because, you know, whatever. And so just humility, like, and repentance, again, it goes back down to that, like repentance is the most humble position you can be in. And so, and I'll say about that too, on the opposite side of things, like when, like we're blessed with leadership, like I can't say enough about John. Like there's so much about John that he doesn't know that people see, you know, and like, and the more that I like pay attention, especially when he doesn't like, he's not trying, like he doesn't know I'm paying attention or whatever, the more I learn about him, like just the more that I like trust him as like our lead pastor and as my boss and as whatever, like, and you talk about the positive things that come from a leader with, you know, a humble spirit and who cares about culture, like John's heart alone and how he loves God and what he genuinely wants to see for this church. It's the overflow of decisions he makes. It's the overflow of his creativity. It's the overflow of what he does in the unseen. And it just like the fruit doesn't lie. And John's human, and he would be the first one to tell you that, of course. But it's like, I know that there have been things that I've come to John about, you know, and like the way he like will listen, or just like the way that he'll sit on it, or the way that he cares, or the way that he, you know, will just, I don't know, like he's an incredible leader, and we're so blessed to have him. But it's like that, I think it's a perfect example of like the overflow, like how it trickles down. Like there's so much about our church and our staff, like we are the way we are, the culture is what it is, like in a lot of ways, like just because it's the overflow of our lead pastor, and in a good way. And so then it's like, if you are a leader, again, like I say all that about our lead pastor to encourage you, or if you're like the CEO or the boss of something or whatever, like the sheep that are under you, like tend to them, you know, like that is a huge responsibility that you have. And when your heart is in the right spot, like, and your intentions are, you know, godly and pure, and you're intentional and, you know, like full of integrity and all of these things, like fruit doesn't lie. And so the flock that's under you, like that you were trusted with, like they will benefit from your obedience and your humility, even though you're not even trying to. Does that make sense? Like John would have no idea that like I think those things, or that I, you know, whatever, you know, but it's like the fruit doesn't lie. And like that's what happens out of the abundance of John's obedience. Like his flock get the fruit, even though that wasn't even his goal. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there in leadership, I guess. What I'm trying to say is like when you're in an actual legitimate, like he's our lead pastor than like, of like the pros and cons there of the power of culture that you hold. And for those who don't think they're in like a typical leadership position, but people still are following you, like it's the same thing. And sometimes that can like power play each other, but it's like, no, like the concept there is the same. Like whatever you do, whoever's under you, it's going to flow down, whether you're aware of all the fruit that comes from it or not. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, anyways, sure. I could preach on that for a little longer, but we'll stop. We've been, this is an episode. It's done.
Yeah. No, I think those are all great points. I think the repentance thing is super important. I found myself there a lot in those spots. And I think the humility part is a big, like, that's something you've got to deal with, like the pride that's there. Because I think a lot of times that's where a lot of this roots from,
for sure.
Of that. And so I think dealing with that and figuring out, because I mean, there's been plenty of times where, and I think the other thing I'd say with that is patience. And like, once you've repented, once you've dealt with the pride, which is a daily thing. That's not a one-time thing. That's a daily thing. But when you deal with that, you find yourself in that humble spot, then it's time to get patient, because a lot of times it's not going to be a quick, immediate thing. Like be patient to let things play out. I mean, there's been several times where we've talked about something, we've looked at, whatever we want to call it, an issue, a problem, whatever, and the words out of our mouths will be like, we know we're not wrong. Like we know
that's not prideful.
Yeah, well, but it's like when you know what I mean? It's like, we know that we know we're not wrong on this, but we're going to have to let it play out.
Yeah.
Like and so I think that, like, even though we may know that, we know that in the end, as Brooke's talking about, like fruit, whatever it is, eventually this is going to play itself out. And it will, and sometimes that just means you got to be patient, which is hard for me. And I mean, we're both very much like doers. Let's just get in. If we see it, let's fix it. And then let's move on.
And sometimes that's just not the way it needs to be.
And sometimes that, sometimes that is what it needs. But sometimes you've just got to be patient and let things play out. And so I think that would be if you don't see a change in 2 days or a week or even a month, don't let that discourage you. Don't let that be like, let you fall back into whatever habits or whatever ways you may have had or been, but just be patient.
Yeah.
Let things play out. Let them develop. You keep doing and controlling what you can control as it relates to you and your attitude and the way that you respond to things. And at the end of the day, eventually it will, you will start to see a change. People will start to notice. People will start to catch on. Or
if fruit don't lie.
Yeah. Or if something ugly needs to get rooted out, like it's going to happen.
Well, and like situations where I laugh, but like we have literally said, like, we're just not wrong about this. Like we would be like, I don't know, for sure you, and it is one of mine, but it is for sure yours. Like discernment is a gift that you have. And when you have the eyes to see something and the Lord kind of points it out, and fruit don't lie. So when it's bad fruit, like it's bad fruit. And so then you're kind of like, red flag, but then again, like, so when you have the eyes to see that, and it's culture is something, if it's on the forefront of your brain, you're paying attention to it. And if someone who's not thinking about culture and they're not paying attention to it, like, it's not gonna, it's not gonna go off for them in the same way like it would for me or you or whatever, if it's something that we've been talking about or, impacted by or whatever. And so it's kind of like, to be like, okay, like, I'm not wrong. Like that's bad fruit. And although it is bad fruit, it's not my lane. Right. But what I can do is, like you said, be patient about it. I can pray into that situation and I can let it be what it needs to be, because we've done that wrong too. We've seen it, but we went out of our lane to try to fix it, or we've been frustrated because we've not been patient or whatever. And like we've then, you have that correction, or you have that kind of discipline. And then the next time something comes around, it's like, okay, this time, like, have discernment. I see the bad fruit there. I see the red flag there. But what I'm going to do this time is, I'm going to pray about it. If I need to say something to somebody, I will, but I'm going to stay in my lane and trust that the Lord, he showed it to us for a reason, so we can intercede and we can pray. And, that's on our radar, but it's like, but it's not ours to like go and try to fix. But again, how will we behave, when we are impacted by the bad fruit? Like how, and I don't even know what that is. I'm just using that as an example. But like, when we're face to face with it, or if it, bucks its head, or if it, whatever, how will we respond? And I think that's, again, part of culture, how you respond in situations like that, how that impacts culture as well. So,
well, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier too, but I think if you are, especially if you are overseeing staff, one, give yourself, like Brooke was saying earlier, like it is just important that it doesn't have to be anything formal or anything, but like you need to just go and sit in people's office, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, and just simply ask them, how are you doing? What's new? What's going, need help with something, whatever. Just checking in and creating opportunities for if that person maybe has something that they do need to bring up, or they do need to say, or there's something that you're doing that they need you to change, or they need done differently or given differently. We do, we're getting ready to, we'll do our previous year performance reviews. Like if you are leading people and you don't do something like that, then I would highly encourage you.
Tell them what that is.
So if you don't know what that is, basically it's just I've got a sheet of paper that basically is like, I don't list everything because I have great people. I don't want to write like whole books on all the great things that they do, but basically I have a spot of things that highlights basically of things that I think they really stood out on in the previous year, things that I've seen them grow in, or just positives. What are positives that I saw from them? And then I have one that is basically what are areas of growth that I want. So like here are it doesn't necessarily mean it's negative things, but hey, here are just things that I want to put on your radar of, this is either maybe potential that I see, like, hey, if you put a little bit of effort towards this, or a bit more focus towards this, I think you could really grow in this area. Or, hey, I think you were, lacking a little bit on this, or maybe you got a little bit off guard. So like, I want to see us push more towards this, put more focus on this. So it's not like, it doesn't have to be negative. It's just, hey, as somebody who we all want to get better, we all want to be improving, we all want to grow. Here are things that, from my vantage point, that I see as areas of potential growth for you. So we'll talk about that. And then the last thing that I will always ask them is basically what do you need from me? Like what is something that either I need to do differently, or is there something that I'm doing that is causing you stress, that is creating more work for you, or is there a way that I can, like just as an example, I had one person who was like, man, I really need a way to keep all of my tasks and projects that you're giving to me. I need a way to keep better track of that. I need a way for you to give those to me. And so that led to, then I said, okay, we need to figure out something that, that can fit this. So then we went to a program that we use where now I can, as we get projects and we get things, I can assign out tasks. And then that way that person knows now they've got a spot that all their tasks go to. And then I can see, like, what have I given to who, and what's, what needs to be done. And so that was just simply from asking the question of, what do you need from me that would help you be better? Because at the end of the day, if your people are better, then that's only going to help you as well. Like that should be your ultimate goal, is you want your people to succeed, because if they succeed, then you're going to succeed.
Yeah. And I think the enemy can use that as like an insecurity thing too. So like if you're a leader and you're asking that question, like, what do you need from me? Or is there anything that I can do that you think I could be doing better, or that you would help you more, or whatever. And if they actually answer that question and it's something that caught you off guard, or it almost feels like a jab that you're not doing a good enough job in an area as their boss, and like whatever, like if it starts to hurt, like if it hurts your feelings, like I mean totally I get that, of course, especially when you're someone who's like hardworking and you're trying to stay on top of it and balance 100 things and lead a huge team, and you've got a lot of pressure and you've got a lot of this, and then you've got your teammates being like, yeah, well, I need this and this from you because you don't do that well. And then it's like, no, like don't buy into that. Like this is just clear communication in a way that everybody can get better, and like you're gonna have your people more eager to work with and for you and feel heard and respected and seen by you because you were humble enough and open enough to ask the question as their boss, to be like, what do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do that helps you? So don't be offended by that. Be encouraged by what could come from that. And on the flip side, if you are, if your boss is asking you, hey, like, is there anything that I can do better to help you? Is there anything you need from me? And you have a list in your mind, but then you tell them nothing, like, don't come back to your boss. You know what I'm saying? Like, like answer the question. Like, be bold enough, be, confident enough to be open and be like, hey, like, I do have issues with this or concerns about this, or I'm kind of confused about this, or this is how I feel about that. Like, if they're asking you, take the opportunity to tell them. Don't be the person who then says, your boss asks you that question. You have a list in your head. You say, nope, nothing, everything's fine. You leave their office, go to lunch, and then tell your friend all these things about, the way that your boss should or shouldn't, whatever. And it's just like, no. Like, again, culture. Like, if you do that in a godly, healthy way in that conversation, both of you, that's going to create a positive, healthy, godly culture. But if we enter that conversation and one of the two ends does not hold up their side of the bargain there, you're not going to have that kind of culture. Yeah. And then it's just this reoccurring problem that we're trying to get out of. We're not, so like, be someone who's bold enough and professional enough and honest enough to just be like, hey, like, here's how I feel, and don't be afraid of how they're going to, what they might think of you or what it could come or da-da-da. Like, just be honest and just have those, godly conversations, and the fruit that will come from both sides being in unity on that is going to be so worthwhile than if we continue to have conversations that are just one-sided, and then there continues to be like division and confusion, because the enemy thrives in those situations, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's not like I think some people get afraid to ask that question, one, because you're afraid of the feedback you might get of like, oh, am I a terrible boss? And, right. I mean, but it's just such an important part to be willing to. And
they won't think that. They'll be like, holy cow, my boss cares enough about what I think and what I see to ask me that. Yeah. Like that's a good thing in your relationship than a bad one, just because you don't want to get your feelings hurt, right. Or it might, make you do something new or more work on your plate or whatever. Like, just don't buy into the enemy's lies about that. It could be a really, really fruitful, positive thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's like a get whatever you want moment. Right. Like, just because, like, again, that's where discernment and things, because there's also been times where I've asked that question and they've brought forward a need, and, I've certainly looked into the need, or I've, discussed if it was a need that was above me, or, whatever, like, and talked about it and looked, and like, I've had to come back and say, hey, like, I hear you and I see that, and, I can do this and this, but like, I can't do, like, or that's just not going to, that's not a feasible thing, or, but, because sometimes that happens as well, but there was still the opportunity for the need to be presented. They know that
you tried,
that I looked into it, that I tried, that I sought out solutions, and I wasn't able to necessarily come to the solution maybe that they wanted or had in mind, but I was able to give them something.
Yeah, and they know that it didn't fall on deaf ears, right? And that's huge.
Yeah, and so I don't. It's like, it doesn't mean that it's just a free, like, here's my list of demands, and you have to take, like, it's not that type of, right. And if you've developed that culture and people know that ultimately you are for them and you want to do what's best for them, the best that you can, like, they're not going to bring unnecessary or crazy things, because they're going to respect you as well, but they are going to feel they're going to feel comfortable enough and trustworthy, that they trust you enough that they can bring this forward, and it's at least going to be heard. And, then it's up to you to decide, is this something that, I need to take to heart? Is this something that needs looked into? Is this a different, system or process we need to look at how we're doing that we maybe need to change? But if you don't ask the question, you don't know any of that. And so it really, you can't think through any of that without asking the question.
And if you're not asking the question, your people might be like, oh, they just don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care what I think. They don't care what I see. They don't care what I hear when I pray. They don't care what my needs are. They don't care, whatever. Like, and the assumptions, that are not the leader's fault, but that can happen when you don't have that open conversation, like that can be, again, really, I don't know, like that can just play a huge part in the culture in a negative way as well. And again, not your fault, but like, what are you for? What are you creating? What are you allowing? So it's like, if you are going to be intentional about building, a positive, godly culture, then, be intentional about the questions you're asking and the conversations you're having and the decisions you're making and the changes that are occurring, and even be confident and let your yes be a yes and your no be a no. And so when there are things that come up and your answer needs to be a no, and, the young pups on your team might, be like, offended or mad or whatever, and like that. But if you have the wisdom to be like, no, like for the culture, for the direction we're going, for what I see, like I know it could offend them. They might not have the perspective, but this is my answer, or this is what we're doing, or making that final call. And then on the other side, if you are, or I say young pup, but even on the other side of the spectrum, if you're, like older and set in your ways and not flexible, like how that can, you'd get feedback from both sides. But then talking to those other groups of people, like if you're someone young on your team and you don't have a lot of experience yet, or you've got a lot of pruning or room to grow, or if you're someone who's been here for years and you've seen the church through a lot of changes and whatever, and like you feel like more than the leader, like whatever it is, it's just like, again, how are you then playing into the culture as what your role is as a part of your team? How are you responding when your boss makes a call? How are you talking not only in the room with them there, but how are you talking about them and the situation and rooms that they're not there? That's about you. That's a you and God thing. That has nothing to do with anybody else. And that's the kind of stuff that impacts culture when you think it doesn't. So, I mean, I think that's a huge growing point in 2025 for sure. It's just... just ways that we can intentionally be self-aware of how my actions and my character, my behavior, my mouth, my attitude, my mentality, my posture, whatever, how that impacts the culture of my workspace. Yeah. Because it has an impact whether you think it does or not.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
If you have thoughts, you have questions, you have input, we would love to hear that. This might be something that as you listen to this and process through it, things or ideas or, again, questions may come to your mind. We would love to continue that, because this is a conversation that I know we think a lot about, and I know we talk a lot about, and we've talked a lot about it on here as well, because it just really is important, and there really is a lot of value to trying your best to get culture right, and it matters. And so, again, we would love for you to join in. You can go to thepraisepodcast.com and message in there. You can always just email eric@thepraisepodcast.com or brooke@thepraisepodcast.com. But we would love to hear your thoughts on this, or maybe you just need some advice or some wisdom as well. We would be happy to give that. Maybe you're sitting in a culture right now that you would love to see different or changed, and would love to talk more on maybe how you can go about starting that. Obviously, Brooke and we gave some good first steps, so at least where to start. But maybe you said, I've done that and I'm still trying to figure out now where to go. Then we would love to chime in or see what we can help you with there. So we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you watching. If you are listening to this podcast and you have yet to get the memo that we are now on YouTube, and you're like, wow, you're telling me that I could see Eric and Brooke's smiling face while I listen to this podcast? Yeah.
It's your lucky day.
It's your lucky day. because we're on YouTube now, so you can head over and just search the Praise Podcast on YouTube, and you'll find us. And so, if you want to just keep listening because you're like, I have no desire to look at them while I hear them talk, then you can, by all means, just stay listening then. But we are on YouTube, so if you want to make the switch or try that out, you can check us out there. So we appreciate you all listening, watching. We love you all. We hope you have a blessed 2025. Hopefully you're starting off your new year in a great and positive way. And we're just believing for really great things this year. And so we're excited to see what happens. So we appreciate y'all. We love you. Let's be people every day in every way that bring the praise. Let's see you next time.